So today we are going to be cooking chicken of the woods 3 ways. I have been wanting to put it on New Ingredient Monday for about a year now, but I had to wait until June before they were in season. As a kid, if you've ever eaten paper, as an adult, if you've ever eaten paper, I don't know if it's been just like a very chilly summer, so I have not been seeing these out, and they were not cheap. Like for 250 grams, it was about like 12 pounds. So pretty expensive little taste test, but I thought that we would just try them for funsies. Chicken of the woods, what is it? Yes, it is a type of mushroom. It is a type of fungus. In the Americas, I think in different parts of Europe, and I think different species are kind of a little bit all over the place too. But how you can recognize them is they grow on the side of, it seems like tree trunks. They call it shelves, but what it really looks like is like a ruffled skirt, but like a lot of layers of ruffled skirt. I imagine it is more easier to identify this one than like, I don't know. Mushrooms are a very scary thing. I don't necessarily like, I don't think that this is for novices to go out and harvest their own mushroom because you could definitely die. Right, so anyways, there's so many like birds of the woods, like turkey tail, chicken of the woods, hen of the woods. Hen of the woods is maitake, completely different thing. This is chicken, and you can remember it like it's supposed to taste like chicken, chicken of the woods. And people have said that the flavor of this is like slightly lemony, so it's reminiscent of chicken, and then obviously also like the meaty texture. I'm going to try it out today because I can tell just from like lifting these mushrooms that they are like heftier. They are more like, you know, like an oyster mushroom where it's like more dense. It's going to give you more bite. It'll be interesting to see whether different parts of the mushroom also taste a little bit different. The underside is definitely a different texture. Like the orange side is more like smooth, like the top of a button mushroom. And then underneath, this yellow layer looks kind of like a sponge. It looks like we've gone underwater and just looking at like sponges. And kind of on the base root, which is probably the part that's closest to the tree, it just reminds me of like, yeah, like a very dense mushroom, like an oyster mushroom. So yeah, the inside meat looks a little bit like whiter. In smelling them, they smell like mushrooms. Like, I feel like mushrooms are kind of a little bit like basic metallic. So it does smell like mushrooms, but there is also something mild about it that I could say like probably would end up tasting like chicken breast, just because chicken breast doesn't have like a big flavor. I watched some videos of people just like cutting these up into chunks and then breading, you know, dipping them and breading them and then frying them as like fried chicken, which is such a waste because you ruin things when you just like fry them like that. But when people tasted it, I felt like more or less, they didn't say it, but more or less they were like, oh, it still tasted like a mushroom. Okay, because mushrooms taste like mushrooms. And I have had various types of mushrooms in the past where they're like, oh, this is really meaty. And at the end of the day, it is a mushroom. It will taste like a mushroom, right? So I think my plan today is I want to try this chicken of the woods mushroom with 3 different preparations. One, all of them I'm going to put teriyaki sauce on top of. So it's going to be like a chicken of the woods teriyaki. The first one, I will just like saute it, you know, just in the sauce. I think the reason for that is I want to just taste how the natural texture and kind of like the flavor of the mushroom would be, just like if I had just prepared it normally like a mushroom. The second way I want to do it is I want to roast it. I want to bake it because I think just the process of baking it and dehydrating it may give this a little bit more of a denser, meatier texture. And then the third way that I'm going to do it, which is going to take a little bit longer, is I'm gonna cut it up. I'm going to put it into my dehydrator, 8 to 10 hours maybe, just until they're dehydrated. I will then rehydrate it, and then we'll try it out that way. So 3 different preparations. So let me go in. I'm gonna clean it first, and then we will do our 3 different preparations, okay? Welcome back. We have 2 out of the 3. This one is fancy. This one is the sautéed one. And as you can probably imagine, I am one of those weirdos. I don't really cook with oil, so what I did was I sautéed it with a little bit of water. And somebody online said to make sure to cook it for at least 10 minutes just to make sure that the mushrooms are cooked. And I think the reason behind that is some people do have this kind of myco allergy to whatever substance is in this particular mushrooms. Cooking the mushrooms and kind of like cooking and denaturing the protein will help with that. Originally, I was planning to put the teriyaki sauce that I made ahead of time in there too, but the thing is, I know how the teriyaki sauce tastes, but I don't know how this chicken of the woods tastes. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll try the chicken of the woods by itself, and then I'll just dip it into some sauce. Like, no doubt it'll taste good with the sauce, but then we'll have a better idea of how the mushroom itself tastes. There's going to be a difference between the thicker, kind of like the stumpier end that's connected to the tree, and then the roughly bits. I think that the thinner roughly bits look more like mushroom. They definitely they definitely feel more like mushroom. Like, even when I was cooking it, it feels more like mushroom. I'm gonna try the roughly bit on the outside first. Okay. It's really thin. Weird. I think texturally it's what I thought. Texturally it looks as it tastes. It is mushroomy, it is like thin, it has the same kind of flubbery bite of a mushroom, but taste wise, and I smelled a little bit of this when I was cooking it, and I just wasn't sure if it was like burning or not, but it wasn't. There's like a bitterness that reminds me of meat. I guess maybe it's not lemony, but it's although there is like a slight lemon flavor to it, even without the teriyaki sauce. It almost tastes like herbal. I don't know, like if you've had like chicken with like ginseng or something, there's like a bitterness to it. If you left meat on like let's say the grill, when you get like a little bit of char, it's not charry, it's not like roasty in that flavor, but it is like slightly bitter. So now I'm going to try the stump part of it. So this one I didn't cook in I didn't put in the teriyaki sauce at all. This one is just cooked in water. Not crazy. It does have a lemony flavor. Like, it is sour. That's weird. Like, not really, really sour, but yeah, it is like somebody squeezed some lemon juice into it. It is not as bitter as the roughly end, but you do taste just like a little bit of that. And I think that little bit of bitterness kind of makes it taste a little bit meaty like chicken. Texture-wise, it's so hard to describe this one because when you bite into like this like stumpier, more dense end, it dries. You know how like when you have chicken breast, like dried chicken breast, it's kind of like dry in texture, and like the fibers of the chicken, like they feel like they're more condensed, but they're like short. Like it kind of dries up your mouth a little bit. This has that. And yes, like it is not exactly like mushrooms. Like let's say an oyster mushroom. It is not that texture. It is harder. Like earthy, harder. This is still just some of the sautéed pieces, and I just wanted to rip it for you so that you get a feel for the texture. So it's not okay. Okay, so now we have this one looks quite fancy. We have chicken of the woods roasted 2 ways. And yeah, this one I kind of like basted during the cooking too, and then at the end I finished it off with more teriyaki sauce, and then this one obviously is dripping. What do I think? I think that this one is going to be more chickeny because, well, because it's roasted. It's been kind of like sort of dehydrated, so I think that this is going to have kind of a more meaty texture is what I think. Oh, look at that. That is... Alright, I'm gonna have to use my fingers. That tears definitely like, that tears like meat, even though, you know, just because it tears like meat doesn't mean it's exactly meaty, but it does tear like meat. This one's so much lighter. It's been roasted and dehydrated. Yeah. That also looks very much like chicken tear. Okay. Let's give the, I guess just the teriyaki bit a try. Very interesting. Okay. Completely different textures. Completely different textures. So, let's talk about the one without the teriyaki sauce first. So this one was baked. I baked it at 180 Celsius for 25 minutes. So it's a little bit like before, where when you bite into it, it has this like drying effect on your tongue. And the fibers, like, it just really reminds me of white chicken breast that way, because it is dry. And almost like it rubs your tongue like that. There is no kind of like the moistness or like the typical like bite of a mushroom. Okay. I think these bits that I didn't like stick in a marinade and like cook kind of more in liquid, these stumpier bits that were roasted almost taste like once you bite it, I told you like it had that like when I was sauteing it, it has this like drying effect, and the fibers of the mushrooms kind of like, so anyways, kind of tastes like I boiled it down to like, I think it tastes like if as a kid, if you've ever eaten paper, as an adult, if you've ever eaten paper, it is that texture. Like I don't know, like wadded up like paper towel or like just paper. And when you start chewing on it, the fibers, they taste the same as if you were biting paper. Which, now that I think about it, and it has that like drying effect on your tongue too, like as soon as you bite it, and that reminds me of white breast meat chicken. But the fact that it tastes like paper is probably not that surprising now that we think about it, because the ruffles, the mushroom literally grows on the sides of trunks. It grows on the sides of trees. So, I mean, it's makeup, it's, you know, like components probably maybe are very similar to the fibers of wood, right? I remember eating wood pulp, but maybe like this doesn't sell this mushroom very well, but I think part of the reason that it does taste like chicken and not necessarily mushroom is this thing where it has like blended in with the wood. Yeah. So it's like wood pulpy, it's like paper. It has that same like texture, that same bite. And I think that the further out that you get to the ruffly bits taste a little bit more like mushroom. So the further out you get, the more mushroomy it gets. But there's this like in between phase where you're blending like mushroom with like wood pulp, and maybe it's that middle ground where it's like it's definitely like maybe like a juicier and a softer chicken versus like as you get to the stumpier bits, kind of the more like dense, dry white meat chicken. And I think that that's really interesting. And then for the parts where I've basted it with the teriyaki sauce, I mean, I apologize because I think with how I cook, because I don't cook with oil, I'm not able to offer you the same things as like sauteing or deep frying, but that's why I did watch those videos on people sauteing it, on people deep frying it, and honestly I feel like they were saying that it just kind of tasted like, you know, like it tasted like mushroom, or like the textures didn't change too much. But now kind of like tasting this, like I do think like it's, yeah, like there's so many ways to manipulate this. Going back with the ones where I baked it and then I basted it, I think just that amount of sauce kept the mushroom fairly like wet, and so it kind of reminded me back of like when, as if you were just sauteing it, or as if you were just like cooking it in some liquid again. So that texture is, you know, similar to before. I just think like when you wet it, it becomes more like mushroom. When you dry it, it becomes more like papery, that like dense paper taste. And it is about finding how much moisture you want to give to it, and then as well as where in the mushroom you want to be cutting off of. That's going to determine the type of like chicken, like how much of a chicken feel you're going to have. Should I re-explain that again? Yeah. The bit closer to the tree, like the stump, is way more dense, way more woody, way more wood pulp, tastes like paper, it is drying, it is more dense. This is not a bad thing, it was just a surprising thing. And then the more that you get out to like the roughly bit, the more mushroomy it gets. So like kind of the softer and kind of more plant, like what we're used to as mushroom, that it gets. So like more wiggly, more jiggly, more of that bite. Somewhere in between though, there's like a gradient from like this kind of like hard wood pulp denseness to like this like more jiggly bit. And that is kind of like, I guess, if Chicken of the Woods was like a whole piece of chicken, then I guess like you could be like, well, like this is like the softer, you know, dark meat, whereas this bit is closer to like really dry, dense chicken breast, and then kind of determining it that way. And then once again, even on this side where it's like more dense and a little bit more dry mouthfeel, you can cook it in sauce, you can brush it with sauce, and so the wetter this bit is, kind of the more soft it is as well. So there's a lot to play with here. And then just in terms of flavor, so that's like all texture, but just in terms of flavor, it did surprise me that it was bitter. Like there is this lingering kind of herbal, slightly burnt, meaty bitterness throughout the mushroom. And I think different parts of the mushroom have different amounts of it, and I kind of feel like the stump, I kind of actually felt like the roughly bit, that bit was really bitter and the stumps were a little bit less. But I imagine maybe each mushroom, whatever phase it is in while it's growing, or when it was harvested, is going to affect that, like a little bit of that lemony flavor, which has kind of left me now. I'm just gonna go back to the one that I sauteed. Yeah. It's light though. It's not like, whoa, it's sour. It's just like light, like it's been put in a marinade for like 10 minutes, not too long. Just a little bit lemony. Oh, I did not try the one that I baked, the roughly bit, so I'm gonna just give that a try now. Ooh. Yeah, just drying it just gets it like kind of meaty in that way. Yeah, the lemon kind of comes later. Actually, this one's not bad. I think because we've dehydrated it, the roughly bit got a little bit more, you know, like compact and dense. And so it became less of a mushroom, more of chicken. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'm just like deceiving myself into this, but like, yeah, I would say that now the roughlier bits are, which are more dense, does taste like more meaty, like ever so more meaty, just having that like bounce. Yeah, I hope you all don't mind this, because I think like a lot of people, they just like go straight to the recipe and then they douse it in sauce, and you never end up tasting like how the thing is supposed to taste. And this is the best way to manipulate something, because now you kind of know like, okay, how do I change this? How do I get this to the texture that I want? And then you go and you put the sauce on, you know? So yeah, there are so many applications to this now. I don't know what, but am I gonna get it again? I don't know. Right. Welcome back, everyone. So it is a new day. It's actually been several new days because I couldn't bring myself to film. Okay. So I've dried these and I've put them in a container. So this is really interesting because, yeah, you can actually still smell it. When I just finished dehydrating them, and actually it only took like, I have like an air fryer that also has a dehydration like thing. It really only took about 3 hours before it got actually quite hard. It smelled like, almost like floral. It smelled like honey, kind of like pollen-y, floral. So I thought that was really interesting. And then it's been in here for a day and a half, 2 days. This one smells more florally, actually. It smells like flowers. Like it smells like flowers, which is really weird. But it also has like a more condensed mushroomy flavor. Whereas when I just finished baking it, it just kind of smelled like flowers, but now it smells like mushrooms and flowers. So I think what I'm going to do is I still want to taste the actual flavor. So originally I was gonna just put some like kind of like a veggie broth on it, but I think I'll just soak this in water for, I don't know, 15 minutes. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it's been 15 minutes. It's definitely made a broth, so, you know, extra things to consider. Yeah. Obviously, if I had soaked this in some kind of a flavored broth, we can, you know, get the flavors to mimic something or another. But again, I really want to just like taste how this mushroom tastes. So that's what we're gonna do. By the way, look, I made these cups, and I tried to, I don't know if you all know who Florian Gatsby is, but he had this technique where like you attach the handle to the cup and then you pull it. It was disastrous, but this was one of the cups that worked. The other one's like warped. It was so thin, but also though, it's like the space here It was very small, but I really like how these came out. So I made one that's soy, nut, and then oat. It's not my original idea. I saw someone at like a pottery fair do something like that, and then I was like, oh, okay. So I'm gonna take the stalk out first. Okay. Just wring that out. Sorry, I think the Euros are on and it's very loud outside. So the stalk, like, you can tell, like, it is, what does it remind me of? It has, it's not meat, but like, what is it, like, oh gosh. It's not a clam, but like, you know, like a long neck clam or like abalone back in the day, right? Abalone, like kind of that texture. It feels like that. I'm gonna rip. I mean, it's definitely properly stiff. What I wanted to say was, in thinking about it from last time, yes, I do think that still the texture and like that mouthfeel, eventually it tastes like eating paper. It's like a little bit bitter. The fibers eventually taste like eating a paper towel. Very much like that. But remember how I was telling you about like how it almost dries out your tongue? I think if you think about biting, you know, like one of those big grapes that have the seeds in the middle, like I don't know what the large grapes are. So either the seeds or the skin. And I think that the tannins there or in the seed, you know how like sometimes when you bite it, it gets bitter, but it also like makes your tongue kind of, I think the word is tacky. It gets kind of like sticky, like, you know, it stops you in your tracks. That is kind of the type of feeling that I'm getting when I have these, especially like the stumpier bits. Okay, so I'll try this. The lemon flavor is still there. I've had so much of this mushroom over the past couple of days, and because it's just so drying once you start biting it. So I think that this mushroom preserves really well. Some people say that you can also just freeze it, like after you chop it up, just freeze it, put it into the freezer, and then it dehydrate, or it thaws out really well. It tastes like the original. This, after I have dehydrated it and then rehydrated it, tastes very much like when I put it into the oven and I roasted it. It has that, like, it's like the same. I don't think that the texture suffered from it at all, but did the texture get kind of more condensed and more meaty? It did get more condensed, but it is very similar to the roasted one. Now I'm going to give the it's not like the umbrella bit, but like the shelf, like the roughly bit, a try. This one will be interesting because the roughly bit was generally like the more softer bit, and it reminded me more of mushroom. So yeah, that's interesting. It has like this like fibrous rip to it. Again, it looks like meat, but you know, I think trees and paper also have a fibrous rip. It smells like mushrooms, smells a little bit like pollen. Yeah, this bit's just more, it's still a little bit lemony, but this one is more bitter. And I don't know, maybe it's just this batch that I have. The shelf bit is a little bit softer, but I do think it is this part that has reaped the benefits of being dehydrated and then rehydrated, because it is more dense. It does taste, actually, I would say just the shelf part actually has a good mouth feel in terms of like meat, just because it is a little bit softer, rubbery, but because the stalk bit is so dense, it's so dense that it just like kind of tastes like you're biting paper towel. the softness of the shelf is actually quite nice. Like, whereas before when you have them fresh, I'm just kind of like, oh, this kind of just tastes like mushroom. When you rehydrate it, or dehydrate it and rehydrate it, it is this shelf bit, the softer bit, that actually benefits from, you know, dehydration. Yes, it has made it more dense, more hearty, more meaty, and in that way it is good because the other bits just, they taste so fibrous. So let me give you my final thoughts, because I've just had so much of it over the past 2 to 3 days. I don't love it. Chicken of the woods. I think if I lived in the woods where they were really abundant and I could pick a lot of them, then yeah, like, of course I would use it. Like, you know, it's fascinating. But in terms of something where, you know, it was 12 pounds for 250 grams, so like about a half a pound, it just, like, the mouthfeel is really weird. Or like the bite and the mouthfeel is really weird. It's like biting paper. So, but this is my first time trying it, so let me know if you all have tried chicken of the woods. It is very well known to be like, you know, like a good substitute for chicken. So especially those, you know, in the States, I know that it's a lot more, maybe more common, and less expensive to like get it there. So let me know if it's supposed to kind of be like bitter, and very paper fibrous-y. Yeah, it's not my favorite. Again, I really want to like things, but it's not my favorite. Okay, that's it for now. Have a nice life, be kind, and yeah, stay awesome.